Well, if I were a character from TV, movies, what have you, it would be a mashup, I think, of Rapunzel and Bilbo Baggins. Rapunzel from the Tangled movie, just because of the way she's portrayed. Very naive, very in love with life, very excited to embark on an adventure and discover more of the world. And Bilbo is kind of the same way, but he's also, thinking about his handkerchief that he left at home and is a little bit more of a practical side. So I feel like I'm
Yeah.
a weird juxtaposition of wanting to embark on something new and adventurous, and then also the practical, grounded, I need to stay home and be a homebody and have my safe, safe place around me. So it's kind of a weird place to be, to live in all the time, but let's go find the adventures in the day to day.
I think that's an awesome outlook. That's so fun. Welcome, everybody, here with the Catholic Author Show. Today we are joined by Chris Cross. Welcome, Chris. Good to have you with us.
It's good to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So we're going to chat briefly about Chris and her origins, her novel, Brio. It's about musicians and in a fantasy story. So yeah, I'm looking forward to just chatting about that one briefly. Catholic Author, it's the show about fiction for modern Catholic authors. We talk creed, craft, and co-creation, rooted in grit, grace, gods and dragons. I'm your host, Dominic D'Souza, founder of Catholic Author, novel lover. We're here to inspire your faith and your fiction. So, Chris, you are a writer for Focus, for Reform Wellness, and several other Catholic organizations, and the author of the recently released teen fantasy novel, Brio. Before we dive into a little bit of your backstory, I'm actually kind of curious to ask you, what's a 30-second overview of your novel? What is Brio?
It is as you said, it's a fantasy story. It's a fantasy adventure that brings you into a world not of dragons, sorry, not of wizards, but of muses and discords. About the powers of harmony versus the power of discord. And musicians who can summon muses must battle against discordians who are only out there to corrupt and destroy. And the novel takes place in the perspective of two very young musicians who are very different from each other, who must work together in order to bring harmony back to their world. So,
That's awesome. And I am so intrigued to ask you how you actually delivered on that, because I've read one or two novels where people tried to express kind of musical drama, and it's hard to do with the written word. So let's talk about that. But first, before we getting into that, what's your origin story? Is there a music background? You play instruments, choral, choirs? What's your origin story?
my origin story is I am a lifelong Catholic. I am a lifelong lover of music. And only in the past a couple decades or so, I would say I was a writer for fantasy and fun. So from the earliest stages, I've always loved music. And my parents loved telling the story that when I was a little girl, I was watching a cartoon and they were playing one of Bach's minuets. And then after watching it, I went to a toy keyboard that we had in our house, and I was playing it. I had heard it, and I was listening to it, and I plucked out the melody on that keyboard, and my parents just looked at each other saying, "What? Did you just play that?" I am no musical genius by any means. I love listening, and I can pick up melodies pretty easily with my ear, but it was from that moment that my parents, who have always been great encouragers of any artistic pursuit that I have done, any pursuit really, artistic or otherwise, they talked to my music teacher. She's recommended piano lessons. I got much more involved in that. I discovered other instruments. I discovered church choir, and it was for a very long time just part of the community that I was involved in, just part of how I expressed myself and my love of God and my love of creativity too. So it wasn't until I would say high school that writing came alongside music as kind of a pursuit. And in so many ways for me, writing is music, and music has a lot of similarities with writing too. Just in terms of how words sound on the page, how you structure paragraphs, how you pace out a story. There's a lot of things that are really similar to how music unfolds, especially if you listen to classical symphonies or even just pop music and how the structure works. It's kind of funny how they align, but they align for me really strongly. And from high school forward, writing and music together kind of became a way to not only express kind of some of the questions I was seeing, or just as a relaxing, stress relieving outlet, but also just to kind of make sense of things that didn't always make sense in our world.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the way both of those play together really closely, when I write, also when I play music. So
That's fascinating. You said a couple of just intriguing things I want to see if I can remember and let's pick apart. But I can kind of resonate with some of that backstory there because I used to be part of a family choir. We used to go around singing, and we almost all of us played instruments. I think I played violin for a little while and flute, and we all started on recorder, and everybody else got piano. But so I get that. But I love how you've taken this kind of immersion in music and then translated it, or into writing. So first, how when you speak to the music of words, right, or structuring of paragraphs and so on, can you speak a little more to that? Like, how does that influence or inspire how you write something or how you choose words? Is it literally you saying it aloud and listening to how it sounds, or is it something? How does
I
that
think
work?
it's part that I was given the advice long ago for writing that if you want to know if a scene is working, read it out loud to yourself. And so there is a little bit of that. That if it doesn't sound right, if it sounds clunky, if it sounds like it's just dragging on the page, then there's probably something wrong with either how you've structured it or the words you're choosing, or it doesn't fit the character that you're writing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of that. I also think when I am rereading a scene or even entering into a piece, it's funny. I don't listen to music while I write at all because I
Okay.
think in my head, as I'm reading a scene, I tend to hear an audio background of what's going on, or it's not even, maybe it's ambience, maybe it's a little scene, but it's something in the background that it's hard to it's actually hard to explain. I actually hear the music of the scene that I'm unfolding, whether it's a tense scene. I
Mm-hmm.
can imagine the soundtrack that's going on behind there. That actually helps me determine, is this too long, is this too short, do I need to bring more detail in, do the characters, like, do they fit in this
Mm-hmm.
scene, almost as almost if I am watching like a television drama and they have the background music on the outside.
That's
So
cool.
a couple of different ways, I would say. Definitely when I'm reviewing something or when I'm just entering into it
Mm-hmm.
in my imagination. So
Do you compose as well? Just curious.
not not a lot. I
Not
have written
publicly.
lullabies
Okay.
for my kids, which I sing to them, and one of those lullabies actually did appear in Brio.
Oh, cool.
So and it's funny because as I read the words, and it just looks like a poem to anybody reading it, but I can hear the melody that I created, and it's kind of like a little. Hopefully, my kids will, when they get older, will read it and be able to hear the CD of that song for them.
That's so
So
fun. So, okay, you've hinted at some intriguing world building here. Can you talk about some of that? What inspired these? Like, I love that word, the Discordians.
yeah.
So, can you speak to how does describe the fantasy world maybe, and a little bit of this magic system, and like how does that work? It's intriguing.
So, yes, thank you. One of the biggest inspirations for the book and its final iterations was actually like kind of twofold. One, the Discernment of Spirits by Saint Ignatius, and then also there was this book that I picked up by Dr. Peter Kreeft that was Angels and Demons. What do we know about them? And it was so intriguing to dive into that idea a little bit more. And as I was drafting Brio at the time, there was something missing because for the first few drafts, there were no muses or discords. There was kind of just this nebulous power of the universe that was way too much like the Force from Star Wars for me, and it was like, this is
Okay.
not working. I have my characters, I know their problems, but this isn't fitting. And I actually, so I was reading some of these things at the time, and it was the idea of the visible world and the invisible. There is definitely the two layers at play, and then just like the hidden music of our lives. So all of these themes, all of these ideas came together, and it was in frustration too that I came forward one day, and I was driving home from work, and I was offering a prayer to God, like, God, if you want this novel to happen, you need to help me out with this part to make it click, because I honestly don't know what I'm missing, and this will be the only time in my life where I can say that an idea popped into my head, fully formed, and it was actually the titular character, Brio. as a muse, and I was like, oh my goodness, my fantasy world is missing like the spiritual element that is invisible to a majority of the populace, but not to those who have an internal sight into the invisible or who have an awareness of that invisible layer. So
Hmm.
it definitely played on the idea of angels and demons, not as a direct ripoff of Catholic angelology, but a lot of it was inspired from that. A lot of it is discernment of spirits and how we are influenced by the spiritual, and that so I brought that in with like discords versus muses. One is definitely about harmony and peace and creation. The other one is about consumption and destruction. So there was after kind of bringing all of those things together and offering that prayer and getting the idea for the character, everything else just fell into place. Like, oh, of course, this is what I'm missing. This is what
Hmm.
it is. So, and it was a delight to be able to bring in some music, kind of nerdiness, some music in there, and music nerds will appreciate it, but you don't have to know anything about music or sheet music or whatnot to appreciate it. And it was nice to be able to bring in music background and some of the things that I learned from my faith and just have them working in harmony, forgive the pun, so well.
That's so cool. Part of your description of the book, you say musicians are those who can summon the power of muses, and then they fight to keep these wicked Discordians at bay. But there haven't been crafters in ages, and you've got some cool sounding characters. You've got an ex-outlaw in here. So as a fiery alchemist, what is the so I'm in painting a picture here. What is it that the story is like? You've got this cool cover. You've got the violin kind of being made out of living elements of wooden leaves and so on. So, in talking about the magic system that you've created, can you speak to that and how that works? And what is it that's being created? What are the works of wonder? How do Discordians kind of break things about? Are we talking like competing orchestras?
Not quite, but I love that idea. I might keep that in the back of my brain for a future book. So the
That would
idea
actually be a
of
really weird battle scene, I've got to say. Just like,
Battle of the Bands
yeah.
or the
Well, there
orchestras.
you go. I like a literal battle of the bands.
You know that's right. There's so the music slash magic system that is at work in the book with all of the characters. You have, as I mentioned, muses and discords. You have musicians who call upon muses for the sake of harmony for creation. So it's in a way it's a musician who has studied the art of music, so who uses what I call cantus, tonus, or uses instruments to play a piece of music or play a chant, play whatnot. They can ask essentially a muse to come help them to assist, and a muse will assist with their natural powers of creation and protection and harmony to create something, to help the musician do something, whether it's help rebuild something that was broken or to vanish like smoke if they need to. So that's kind of what the muse is doing. It's a partnership. It's a collaboration between the muse and the musician as part of that like harmony speak. So that's the muse side of the magic system.
Mhm.
The Discordian side, it's more of a contractual thing that I'm gonna offer this to the Discord, which is basically a corruption of a muse. It's a spirit, but who only is interested in devouring and destroying. If they make a contract with the Discord, it's like, sure, I will get the Discord's power and be able to use it however I wish, for whatever selfish gain I want. But then there's the trade-off of they get to possess me. So, and eventually, it's the downside is the Discord will obviously alter their personality and take over their mind. So it's really this eventual confrontation between those who want to protect and create and to go along with the flow of nature, and those who want to just use for their own selfish ends, and
Mhm.
the kind of the headbutting there. So
Very cool.
that's kind of a very basic overview of how the magic system is designed in Brio.
Very cool. Is there I'm curious, is there like a cost built into the good side? Like are there any effects for when they use magic, does anything happen or can they just use it as
It's
often as they need to?
in terms of limits, there's a limit on skill. So if you don't study music, if you don't know how to say it, you can't obviously just call upon something that you don't know, and you have to be able to see the muses. So whether by long-term study of music or you're just a natural, you can see the muses. If you can't, then you can't really interact with them or know how to interact with them. And then kind of like a musician who performs a very long set or long piece, you do get physically exhausted when you're performing music. And the same applies in this world, is that there's just an element of you can't just keep going and going and going and going. There's a bit of energy expenditure as you're summoning these muses and trying to do it, so you can't do it forever. So there are a few limitations on what muses are what you're able to do by summoning muses to help you create. So there's a little bit of the trade-off. So
Well, that's cool. Well, hey, for those who are watching or you're listening, if you're enjoying this, please go ahead and hit that like button right now. It helps more people to find out about Chris, hear about what they're doing. In a second, I want to ask you about your writing process and how that works. But first, this interview it's like a preview of the community that we're building in Catholic Author. It's a super friendly, creative community for the modern Catholic author. Give and get feedback, share your insights and your works in progress, and build a network of supportive friends. And plus, there's a whole lot more going on. Come and check us out and join us, CatholicAuthor.us. So, Chris, what's your writing process? How do you make it work? Do you just squeeze it in when you can? Is it sitting in a chair 8 a.m. every day? Everybody else can just, volcanoes or high water, whatever. What's your process?
well, in terms of the terms planner or pantser, whether you plan everything out or you just fly by the seat of your pants, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm a plantser. It's definitely valuable to me to find time on the fringes of my day where I can sit down every day if I can, at a regular time, just to, even if it's one sentence, if it's one paragraph, whatever it is, if I'm lucky, it's a couple pages, just to keep moving forward and to keep the draft going. Because I am a full-time mom and a full-time work-from-home, self-employed contractor and full-time housekeeper, there's not a lot of time to just set aside like an hour or two every day.
Yeah.
So I wake up usually between 4:30 and 5 in the morning, and as soon as I do, I get up, I do my morning prayers, and then I say grace, and grace is, bless us, O Lord, for these thy gifts, which I'm about to employ for your glory through Christ our Lord, amen. And then that's what gets me into the writing zone, where I can just sit down and I kind of read the last paragraph that I left off with in a chapter, and then just kind of progress from there. So.
Gotcha. Cool. How do you have any when you wrote this novel, do you like to work with just singular novels, or do you like to think about series? Do you have a new project coming down the pike?
I do. So following Brio, this was supposed to be the my hopeful beginning of a series, and while I was writing it, I took the advice of somebody else who was very, very wiser than me. And they told me, just focus on writing that first good book, because you can't count on like just starting the series. Focus on writing that first good book. And so I was able to do that, and the reception has been lovely. I've got a lot of encouragement, a lot of people asking me for book 2. So I let the response decide that, yep, this is actually part of a series. So it's interesting writing a sequel now, in that I am looking forward and trying to make sure that all of my little details are in a row. Not just for this book, for continuous books. There are things that I planted, little seeds that I planted in the first book that are coming forward in this one, and hopefully there's a bit of growth and momentum. So I think I have most things figured out. There are a lot of things that I don't, so it's part of the adventure as I discover the creativity that's going to come forward from that.
That's awesome. How do you include your readers, now that you've done the first book, moving forward? Do you anticipate including more your readers, and sort of what are you thinking about how to do that, how to sort of incorporate the fans and where this goes to make sure that you're doing what you want to do, but also something that they're also excited and feel like they have a part in helping to drive?
Well, I hope that I can take advantage of a community, maybe one such as Catholic Author. If there's anyone who would like to be beta readers out there, that would be incredible. But and for the first book, I relied a lot on friends and family, people who knew me, that I was willing to share a piece of my soul with them to say, should I actually pursue this, or is this trash? And all of them said, no, you should try to get it published. So that was very encouraging. But it's better to have people who don't know me at all, or who aren't concerned about love and concern for me, in order to really give good feedback and also just engage in that creative process. I have been blessed to be a part of a writers group of just a couple of other women who are wonderful writers who always bring me good feedback and insight. I would love to get in contact with even more people to read drafts in progress and to share their insights, share their feedback, share what is missing, what the gaps are, what the weaknesses are, in order to just strengthen out the story as much as they can.
No, I think it's exactly why Catholic Author is here. But I remember when I was starting out, there were no like online Catholic communities for writers, at least that I knew of way back when. And finding an online community has changed everything, because I could now write. In a way, it was like collaborating with them, writing with them. Their feedback instantly turned it around and helped me think about things that I didn't think about. When you're crafting a story or coming up with a story, do you find it's more of an idea driven, like, oh, this would be really cool, and now let's build a story around that? Or it's like, is it more character driven, like, I love this character and I just want to have adventures with them, and kind of, what's your starting point? Where do you find you end up?
I think for me, it's kind of perhaps a mesh of both. It's scene driven. I know with Brio, when I decided to sit down and write it, I had this vision of a boy playing a violin against a monster. And that's a very strange thing, and I don't even know how I ended up there in the ramblings of my imagination. Probably just like watching the Lord of the Rings movie trailers or something like that. But I was like, oh, that's really cool. So that kind of that frozen image in time, I'm like, what is the story from this? Where does it go? Where does it lead? I would say that, and it gave me the opportunity to discover who that character was after I envisioned that picture in my head, and then whatever the ideas that stemmed from there. So I think it's kind of a hodgepodge of the two. If scene driven actually is a thing, I don't know.
I think that's really, does that little image that you created there, does that actually show up in the first book?
Yes,
That's
it
awesome.
does. But I'm not going to say more because I don't want to spoil.
Well, how can people get in touch with you, Chris?
Well, I am on Instagram. My handle is at CrissCrossAuthor. I'm also, you can get in contact with me via my website, which is crisscrossauthor.com. And it's not like crisscross, it is CHRIS cross. So those are the two best ways. If people want to reach out, I would love, 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 love to hear from more Catholic authors, hear from readers, to just shoot the breeze, if you will. So please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to get to know you.
Awesome. Well, fantastic. This is always my favorite part of the interview. If you had 1 minute to share a message of encouragement to other Catholic writers, what would you want to say to them?
I would want to say what was told to me, in very simple words: keep writing. That it kind of comes from just whether you feel stuck, whether you feel you should do it, whether you're not sure, whether you think that your writing is terrible or brilliant or somewhere in between. Just keep doing it, because if you don't, you'll never discover the ending of the story. You'll never discover what writing is to you. And it's, at the end, it's not about getting published. It's not about just becoming a best-selling author. It's about answering the question in your soul: must I write? And if the answer to that is yes, then you have to pursue it. You have to build your life around that. You have to keep going. You have to keep pursuing that. So keep writing.